ahead and start. So I'm Barbara Falk. I'm with a member of the MCMA working on the programming committee, and I'll be moderating today's fireside chat. I want to introduce our panelist, Dave Fry. He is the Chief Technology Officer at Fry Communications and a technology entrepreneur involved with a number of other companies, as well as an investor and a board member. So Dave, I'll let you start.
I appreciate it. Thanks very much, Barb, and thanks everyone for having me today. I was going to talk a little bit about what COVID meant for us at Fry Communications and its implications for the printing industry. We got our first question about the coronavirus. I remember it was March 2nd. One of our customers asked us, what were our plans if we weren't able to get any trucks to ship to New York City? And we thought that was a somewhat strange question. We weren't prepared to answer that at that time. But we made a real point to take it seriously and push hard to get the company prepared. And so that was the first week of March. By the second week of March, we were putting plans in place for disaster operations and high priority on keeping the employees safe. So we immediately started with protocols around hand washing and distancing and communication about don't touch your face, etc. And I remember during that time that it happened very fast. So while on Monday we proposed internally stopping all company travel, and some people thought that was sort of outrageous, just 2 days later on Wednesday, we declared that no customers could come visit us in Pennsylvania. We're headquartered in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, by the way, near Harrisburg. So moved quickly in that regard. We put a lot of policies in place around distancing, got rid of all company meetings internally, no more crowding people into a conference room. Everything had to be done virtually by Google Hangouts or on conference line. We had a strict quarantine in place. Anyone who showed any signs of illness at all had to stay home for 14 days until the cessation of those illness. The cleaning crews started cleaning multiple times per week, much more than normal. Things like bathrooms and door handles are cleaned every 8-hour shift. We, of course, like a lot of people, couldn't buy some of these products, so hand sanitizer was a problem. Luckily, we had 55-gallon drums of 99% alcohol, which we used to mix chemistry for the presses. And we were able to buy some blackberry aloe online in large volume. We mixed our own hand sanitizer, sort of smelled a little bit like some sort of moonshine from a still. And I think we called it Harry's Happy Hands, because Harry is the name of the head of maintenance. So we distributed Harry's Happy Hands throughout the company to everyone. Fry Communications has about 100 non-production employees, and these are people, that have in finance, HR, IT, customer service, etc. About 800 production employees, and those production employees are spread out across about 1 million square feet in 5 buildings and 4 shifts. That means that you're able to do a fair amount of social distancing. There are some job functions, like in the bindery, where people do have to work right next to each other, but we tried as much as possible to emphasize sanitation and cleanliness and keeping people separate. We shifted all the breaks, for instance, on a staggered basis so that people wouldn't crowd into the cafeterias together, things like that. We also worked really fast to try and get virtual private networks set up so that most of those non-production people could work from home, which they had not historically done. So that was a little bit of a shift, and it went pretty well. So for the most part, most of our people who are not working on machinery and manufacturing are working at home right now, and they have been for about the last 2.5 months or so. As the virus progressed, it really started to feel like a whole series of whack-a-mole. Like every couple of days, some new challenge presented itself. The third week of March, the governor of Pennsylvania declared that all businesses had to shut down unless they were what he called life-sustaining. And he declared that publishing was life-sustaining and paper manufacturing was life-sustaining, but printing was not, which was definitely a real scare for us. And we had 36 hours to shut down operations according to this executive order. We have many medical publications, hospital publications, nursing training, periodicals, scientific research, etc. We also do digital operations for a number of governmental bodies, such as the state of Pennsylvania itself and the Federal Reserve Bank. So we wrote a letter and appealed to the governor, and luckily he changed his order to include printing as a life-sustaining industry, and we're able to keep operating. So we sort of dodged a bullet in that regard. We had another big challenge a couple of weeks later when the governor ordered that everyone had to wear masks when working in a business that was still allowed to operate. And as you remember, it was really hard to get hold of masks in this time frame. And we located an Amish group in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, that was hand sewing masks at home to raise money for their local communities. And we were able to acquire several thousand masks with basically 8 hours of time limit before we had to start using them by the governor's order. And the whole process sort of felt a little bit like that, like we just sort of confront a challenge, find a solution for it, keep moving on. Now, this obviously had a large impact on our customers as well. We saw volume decreasing very quickly in the first 2 weeks of March. First, it was travel and anything related to event. So publications and event guides, travel brochures, magazines around travel, all that went first. Anything in the New York City area was hit very quickly. Then moved on to retail and coupon books, things like that, which were primarily advertising based. And then basically everything that had an ad after that slowed down. And we also saw that newsstand sales had a major impact. It was interesting, during the very first week or two of COVID, you might have read that newsstand sales actually went up. And that was primarily driven by the panic buying that was going on in grocery stores. People were crowding into the checkout aisles, and while they were waiting in line, they would buy some magazines. So there was suddenly an uptick in magazine sales for the first week or two, but it quickly went away. Barnes & Noble and Costco shut down their magazine sections. Airport sales plummeted. Any specialty retail stores that were for particular industries, such as comic books that were in specialty comic book retail, all those shut down. So there was a big drop. And even the stores that stayed open and continued to have magazine sales, we saw a 30% drop in those in the April timeframe. We have visibility to that because we have a business called MPS Media Group, which works with publishers on magazine sales and where to consult, where to sell them best. And we get access to that data on a regular basis. Our customers did both skipping issues altogether, reducing print runs. There are companies that use their print periodical mainly as a brand extension for driving their event business or their digital business. And they already know that their print product loses money on its own. And for them, it was sort of a no-brainer decision to skip an issue or two. And we definitely saw that happening in the March, April timeframe. It's interesting, we started to see things come around though, then in May. Those newsstand sales that had dropped precipitously rebounded. And in fact, throughout the second half of May, most of May really, we saw newsstand sales at retailers that had been open throughout the entire crisis go up 5% ahead of previous year sales. So there was sort of a pent-up demand for people to buy print products, which we were heartened by. I think that may also have been helped by the $1,200 stimulus checks that people were receiving. We also saw that some publishers would sort of what I call flood the zone. Their advertisers were trying to regain market share against competition. There's a famous story from Sam Walton during a recession, I think it was in the early 80s. And he said, I thought about the recession and I decided not to participate. And what he meant was that when times were tough, he decided to invest and gain market share against his competition. And we've definitely seen that happening some now among people who are expanding their print runs in certain areas. Some of the cruise lines, for instance, have taken lists of their best customers who are very eager to go cruising again, and have started marketing them pretty heavily to try and build subscriptions and reservations for cruises to take place later this year. We've also seen that some coupon books across the country are increasing sales, again, trying to steal market share from local competition. So our business at Fry, the volume of printing probably reached its low water mark in the second week of May, and we've seen it starting to climb back since then. The last week of May actually was a little bit ahead of last year total volume for us, but I think it's a bit of a fluke based on scheduling. It's not totally back from where it was before, but we see it growing. There's also been some major dislocations in the print industry, some of which were already underway before the virus. You may know that in the print industry, there's two huge companies, Quad and LSC, each of which are multi-billion-dollar companies. And then you drop down, far down, and you find companies like Fry Communications, a handful of others. They're less than 1/10 their size. Well, Quad tried to purchase LSC last year. That was blocked by the Department of Justice on antitrust basis. And LSC had been sort of indicating they might go bankrupt. And shortly after the virus started, they did declare bankruptcy. Also, some other printers have shut down completely, smaller ones. Senveo, which is a fairly large company, shut down its largest periodical manufacturing plant in Virginia a month ago. And some of that work has come to Fry. So we've been beneficiaries of some of this industry dislocation. We also saw our customers who have major digital operations saw huge increases in their digital traffic. This is particularly true among city regional magazines. It was harder for them to take advantage of that because while they may have a 50% increase in traffic to their website, their advertisers don't have 50% more money to pay for ads. So it was a little bit of you couldn't get more blood from the stone. It did help them somewhat and alleviated some of the economic problems from the virus. And we have a company called Aisling that produces a product for magazine companies to manage their ad sales. And we have been working on some new functionality related to the Google Ad Manager. So we worked quickly to rush that out in the April timeframe to try and help them take advantage of that traffic. At Fry, as this volume went down, we reduced the amount of hours our employees could work, which was financially painful for them. And we had to do layoffs in that non-production staff. Fry is too large for a PPP loan, so we weren't able to get any kind of governmental relief. And we've just tried to manage through as best we possibly can. As things move back and we're starting to see this increase in business and a little bit of return to normalcy, we're hearing from our customers that ad sales are showing some life again, but the problem continues out there. I'd say at Fry, we are feeling stronger, frankly, in a weird way after this process. We've learned a lot about how to confront challenges and solve them. It's been very painful, those people who left us during those layoffs, some of them 30-year employees. But we also feel we have better relationships with our customers, a certain shared adversity that we've developed with our company, our customers, and makes us all better partners together. So that's sort of my summary of Barb of how the virus impacted at least us in the printing industry.
Have any of your printing clients done anything particularly interesting or inventive as part of their response that you could share with us?
I haven't really seen anything like that. I think the only thing that was a little surprising was when the virus first started, some of them had already made print runs for large editions, maybe many pages, for instance, related to a coupon book. They asked us to take the signatures that had already been printed but not yet bound, hold them, and then they are binding them into later editions running in the June and July timeframe. We haven't seen anything particularly innovative in special treatment on covers or new special editions. Certainly a lot of the magazines, maybe almost all the magazines had COVID-related content in them. That certainly took place. But I didn't see anything particularly trying to sort of take advantage of the situation.
And I mean, what do you think now that we're starting to come out of this, states are opening up, companies are opening up? Can you get more into detail about what you think the outlook on the print magazine industry is going to be? I mean, I know that as far as printers, it's consolidated because of LSC and some of the other smaller ones. But where do you think things are heading?
Well, before the virus, our feeling was that print definitely had a value, but it was becoming an item in a sort of a luxury item, often in luxury markets. So print is really valuable if you have a product that benefits from the luxurious presentation versus digital. So travel, high-end retail, fashion, beauty, high-end real estate, etc. These products take advantage of what you can produce in print over the ephemeral nature of digital. No one prints out their favorite blog sites and puts them on their living room coffee table to show their friends who their identity is, but they do that with travel magazines, for instance. So in the right place, print is, I think, an evergreen product. However, the economic conditions are tough for particularly those luxury markets that I talked about. And so it's a tough situation for both publishers and printers. And the virus has it's probably accelerated some of the consolidation that was going to be happening as a natural course anyway, both for publishers and their printers.
And then when are you going to actually be like reopening and having your employees come back in and allowing customers to come back and so forth? Are you doing it in phases?
Well, in Pennsylvania, they're doing phased reopenings county by county, and they just opened our county, Cumberland County, this week. So we would have governmental okay to do that as of yesterday, or sorry, Monday. We have not yet given the all clear to our staff that's working from home, and we don't really have an immediate time frame for doing that. It seems to be working pretty well, and there are still cases of the virus growing in Cumberland County, and might tempt fate, so we're holding off on that. Customers definitely want to come do print inspections, have they done before, and so we're looking to address that soon, but we have not yet given that okay. I suspect we will in the short term, though. I'm sorry.
Finish.
We have made it very clear that anyone coming to the company, whether it's a customer or a service person coming to repair a press, for instance, has to wear a mask. We're adamant about that and think that's really important for preventing the spread of the virus.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Here's a question that I thought of, because working in where the products that I market are mostly print products. Did you find that for the products that were printing that you were having any issues as far as places where they could be delivered, or sort of having to rethink routes and so forth, based on the fact that so many places were being shut down and, while and there were the stay-at-home orders, and while you might have like the interstates still up and running, but the fact is anything off the interstates was shut down. So did you have any clients with those issues where you had to sort of reroute things?
So we didn't have any sort of transportation problems, and that was one of the biggest concerns we had in the very first couple of days in early March. And we worked with our logistic partners, got confirmation from them. Even the post office, we were worried about the post office. And I'm not aware of any problems just trucking something someplace. Retail locations definitely shut down, however, and as I mentioned, that impacted print runs. There must have been some examples of something got printed to be trucked to some place where it couldn't be received. I'm, to be honest, not aware of that. I haven't heard of that, but I have to think that must have happened somehow. But most of our publishers were able to adjust their print runs in time, so they weren't printing extra material. It's interesting, the comic books are the ones that I know were most directly impacted. I'm sure there are probably other examples, but a huge percentage of the comic book industry was essentially frozen out for about 2 months by then.
Wow. And then I understand you also have a candy business.
I do.
So amongst other companies that you own or you work with. So how has the candy business been doing?
So I'll just say the candy business was started as a way of supplying, protecting employment in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, where Fry is located. 10 years ago, when we were worried that printing might be in the decline, we wanted to have another manufacturing business that people would be able to migrate to if necessary. And so we purchased a very small candy company. It's called Sweet Jubilee, and we've been growing it since then. Turned out that was never a concern. Actually, Fry, if anything, has had trouble getting enough employees, not too many. So that was never necessary. The candy company, though, faced its own COVID problems. Within the first week or two of the virus, our largest customer, who's a major distributor, announced they were shutting down. Like many businesses, they already had economic problems, and the virus just pushed them over the edge very quickly. And so that was a problem for the candy company. Retailers that we would sell to were shutting down just like everyone else. So they canceled purchase orders, et cetera. So sales of the candy company are about 25%, down 25% relative to last year at this time. But just as in printing, we've developed some new relationships with some new distributors, and we're hopeful that the second half will be better than the second half last year, and we're going to try and make up that ground. We did not have to shut down the candy company. We were able to keep operating with a reduced staff throughout the entire time, and everything I mentioned about our steps to keep the printing company employees safe all apply to the candy employees as well.
And are you seeing the same thing with other companies that you own, or that you are on their boards or so forth? I mean, has anyone, say, industry really like flourished that, or surprisingly did well?
I work with a company called GTXL, which is a digital editions company. So they provide online versions of magazines and periodicals, and they had an explosion of orders, a lot of it driven by event companies that need to have an outlet for their materials. Also governmental organizations, things like that. So if an event was going to be happening in May and it got canceled, they needed a way to distribute all digitally all the materials they're going to be handing out at the event. And so they got a lot of new orders for that reason during that time frame. I think one of the most surprising things was as a medical billing records company that I work with, they do billing for doctors' offices and hospitals. And they saw both an increase in the early days and then a complete plummet of people going to the doctors. As I'm sure you've heard, almost all non-emergency medical cases across the country were put on hold, and that had a major impact on their business.
Okay, we have a few questions, so I'm going and getting those opened up. What will the impact be on magazines if the USPS doesn't get the funding it needs?
I think it's a big issue. It's something we're definitely worried about. I've sort of taken it as a position of faith that one way or another they'll get the funding they need. It'll definitely be a problem, also a problem for direct mail, which, by the way, I should mention when you asked about magazines, direct mail is also showing a real resurgence in the last couple of years. It's interesting that millennials seem to find a real sense of novelty of sorting through their mail. After having grown up with email their whole lives and text messaging, we're finding the direct mail has a real purpose in that marketplace right now. It was starting to grow well. So we're hopeful that the post office will get its financial help it needs and will keep operating. I still think it's going to have to be the case. It's unimaginable that it would be otherwise, I think.
And for your, from Fry's perspective, with direct mail, did you see people cutting back on what they were sending?
They did cut back in the short term. So, ad books, coupon books, for instance.
Okay, so coupon books.
Yeah, things which are based on, going down the street and selling ads to pizza places and nail salons, all of them were shut down. Yes, tremendous impact on that. But we're seeing that rebound, and that fits into that category I talked about of people trying to gain market share. So you may have noticed in your area, I saw restaurants advertising on television in the Detroit area, for instance, where I live, which is quite shocking. So you never saw that before. People really trying to emphasize and differentiate themselves from the competition.
Right, exactly. Yes, no, I know you had said that about coupons, and I was wondering, do you do any direct mail work for, say, traditional, like, periodic publishers, where you might have seen some impact, like for magazine subscriptions? Or
we don't do magazine subscription.
Okay.
Direct mail usually, so that one I'll have to pass on.
Okay. Todd, are there any other questions?
I don't believe so. I think folks have asked, and we're kind of in a good spot.
Okay. Well,
Thank you
so much, Dave. We really appreciate this.
I've enjoyed it. Appreciate having me.
That's when I get to come back.
Okay. I'm
Thanks,
sorry,
Dave.
Todd. I
What?
usually have Facebook on my phone.
All good, all good, all good. We're still live. So here we are, folks. We're grateful for you spending a few minutes with Barbara Falk from Remedy Health Media, David Fry from Fry Printing, right, Dave? Fry,
Fry Communications.
Thank you. I was going to say communications, then I blame the fact that I teach kindergartners every day and a third grader, and it's an interesting life right now. Either way, so glad that everybody's here. We do continue this series next week. Hope you'll join us, same time, same bat channel over Zoom or on Facebook, and hope everybody has a lovely day. We'll have the video of this out on the site probably in the next day and in next week's newsletter too. So hopefully when you see it, you'll share it with folks and expand the reach. Have a wonderful day and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.